Glenn, you're a funny dude. You're listening to All Burgundy and Go Everything podcast powered by the Urban Sports Scene and Fox Sports Radio 96.9 FM and 1340 AM. Hopewell, Virginia. I'm Wole, and I'm joined by my guys, George, Glenn, and Mo. We also have Tony McGee's Pro Football Plus's Commanders reporter Donna Hopkins on with us. Donna was at the NFL Combine. So, Donna, I'm going to ask you this real quick. First off, hope all is well with you. And secondly, how was the NFL Combine?
Hey, I'm so glad to be on with all the fellas tonight. I mean, this is the first time in a long time.
I know, right?
I've been on with all of you all. But the Combine, my first time out there, it was fun. I mean, you know, you got to shake with some of the coaches, players, agents. It was fun because I was there to be nosy to find out what I could find out that, you know, picking the GMs, Coach Quinn and all of those guys to learn a little bit more. I mean, pretty much that you knew a lot already, but what was really on their radar out there, I mean, they're not going to talk about it a lot, but you did get some intel a little bit about some of the players that was out there. I focused on the defensive line because I think that's where they should start in my book. And I, you know, got to talk to some of the tight ends, some of the top tight ends, which even though if the Commanders, you know, stick with Zach, they still need to be starting to look at that. We know that they got Ben Sinnott last year, but to me, they didn't play him a lot. So it's still unknown territory when it comes to Ben Sinnott. And then John Bates, you know, people may be looking at him to snatch him up from the Commanders. And he's a key piece for the Commanders moving forward because of his blocking skills. So in the tight ends that I talked to, a lot of them were well-rounded tight ends that did catching and blocking. And a lot of the ones I talked to were key blockers, which is key in this Commanders offense, is being able to block and shore up that offensive line a little bit more. So the combines were fun to be at, you know, to see how it really works with all those players. It's just too many players to look at. But so you have to go prepared to kind of like look at what the team that you're covering need to plug in to move forward. And that's the key thing to me is talking to Coach Quinn is where do you pick up moving forward with this Commanders team? And Lance was telling me that, you know, they literally have to look at every position. They only have 47 men on the roster and also a lot of free agents on this team that they hoping to sign some of those back. And a big shout out, Bobby Wagner was one of those guys that they just signed back today. So I think that that was a key player to make sure that you have come back. He signed a 1-year deal to be with his Commanders team. But so that's one area that they really plugged back in. And as Lance said, they're looking to bring some of the free agents back because they like what they did. But, you know, teams are out there trying to snatch players, and everybody's looking at the Commanders of how were they so successful last year being at 12-5. So moving forward, Coach Quinn said that they were looking at what the coaches did, what they can change up, what they need to change up come this year, the skill set players and all of that. So they were kind of like looking at all avenues because as much as this team was put together last year, we know that some pieces are going to be broken up, but the key player that won't be broken up is Jaden Daniels. And everybody that I heard out there, the Commanders was the hot topic out at the combines because even the players told me at the end of last season when they were cleaning out the locker room that a lot of players want to come to Washington. And that's what I heard when I was out at the combines.
I know that's right. I know it's, you know, obviously because what happened last year. So, and the vibe with this team. Before we get into some more combine talk, hey, make sure you subscribe to our podcast on all podcast platforms, which includes Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, and again, other podcast platforms. Just search All Burgundy and Go Everything. Also tweet us at ABG_everything. Hit us up on IG and TikTok at ABG_everything. If you're on YouTube right now, you know what time it is. Hit that red subscribe button. Also like this video. Also, if you're not on YouTube, just go to the All Burgundy and Go Everything YouTube channel and like the video, and also subscribe. Again, subscribe. We're on the march to 1,000, so make sure you subscribe. And if you are you feel real generous, hit us up with a super chat. You know what I mean? We'll prioritize that message on that comment on our on the show. But let's go back into the combine. So Donna, you mentioned like I know you mentioned tight end. You said defensive line is one of your big things. Now I agree. I think defensive line should be huge in this draft. But Donna, knowing you over the years, you like the offensive lineman too. Like you all about. So I'm about to ask you, was there any O lineman out there that where you were like, all right, that dude could be a commander?
Let me tell you all this. I'm looking at the offensive line and the defensive line. Those are number one on my list. The trenches of where games are won is the line play on both sides. And I think that when you look at Washington's offensive line, Cosme is coming off this season that ACL injury. So he's not going to be full speed for a minute. But a tackle position is one that the Commanders have to, and I know that Brandon Coleman, they got him last year. You can't get enough offensive linemen and defensive linemen. But Coleman, along with that tackle position, because to me, he's a true guard. So if you get a tackle, Will Campbell, he will be gone by the time the Commanders pick. And then Kevin Banks was another guy that I had kind of like mentioned. He's one that probably you're going to have to groom a little bit, but I think that he would be a great addition to this Commanders team. And Simmons also is another player that I had on my list as far as offensive lineman. The key thing about this draft this year, where it was heavy quarterback last year, this year is heavy as far as defensive linemen. So although it's some great offensive linemen that's going to be in this draft, I don't know if they will be there when the Commanders pick later on in the first round. And I know that everybody talks about picking the best player on the board, whether it's a defensive tackle, a defensive pass rusher, an offensive lineman, who is that best guy. But to me, this Commanders team with tight ends, I know that they got tight ends that if they did not get one this year, they could go with what they've got. But if somebody's on the board that they want, you want to grab them. But I'm not moving up. I'm not moving down. I'm staying right where I'm at so I can get either an offensive lineman or a defensive lineman. And I think for the Commanders, they're going to be in a good position to get a defensive player at that pick in the first round. So I mean, Mason Graham was one of the guys I had on my list as far as defense, but he'll be gone by the time. I mean, he's one of the top picks in the draft, but he will be long gone. Yeah. But Walter Nolan is another guy that possibly could be there because he was next on my list from Graham. And looking at him out there, this is a guy that you could really plug in. And I think that he would be instrumental. And then Walker is the other guy that I looked at, Deion Walker from Kentucky. Yeah, that's another guy that you could possibly look at if by chance you don't get in free agency a Mal Garrett. I mean, to me, if you could get him and have him as the pass rusher, and you could still, to me, plug in another one because we know Jonathan Allen will be gone. And to me, him and Daron Payne never did complement each other after the first season. So definitely, I think that you have to look at somebody in the middle, even though Johnny Newton is the guy that they got last year. I think he played pretty well for the most part. Second year coming in, he should be much better as far as his skill sets. And Coach Quinn talked about them working on these guys even more so in their second year, some of those guys. So you've got some people to plug in there, but still, I think that if you got to get a couple of pass rushers because the pressure wasn't there, and then you've got to get a run stopper because when you look at the Commanders' defense as far against the run, I think they were dead last, and they struggled there. So you got to get a guy in there that complements Payne that can end up plugging up that. So Johnny Newton, he's there, but you still have to get a guy that can plug up that middle, a nasty guy that, you have to measure yourself with the Philadelphia Eagles. So what they did in that Super Bowl to Kansas City, they took their heart away. And to me, the reason why Philadelphia is really successful, their line play on the offensive side and the defensive side, but they are nasty on defense. And that's where Washington has to measure themselves in getting better, is that you've got to get some key players on defense. With what Carter did, Carter took on 2 players and they still wasn't able to stop him. I mean, he just bowled over all of those guys. Washington, for the most part, wasn't able to handle one guy. So to me, that's where they, to me, need to address, whether it's free agency, whether it's through the draft, is that you've got to have some guys in the trenches on both sides of the ball.
And y'all have any other comments for Donna?
Yeah, to that point.
Go, George. Go ahead.
Yeah, to that point, there's now been a lot of talk, at least today, about Hendrickson from the Bengals, Washington being involved in that. Where do you stand on him as a potential target for Washington?
Oh, I'm good with that, because when you look at his skill sets, as far as I'm surprised that the Bengals are letting him go, because this is a guy that I think had 35 sacks in the last couple of years. Hey, can you say 35 sacks in the last 2 seasons? Washington didn't have that in how many seasons as far as sacks? So if you can get a guy of his caliber, that would be great. But what do you have to give up to get him? It's the key thing. I mean, draft picks. Are you willing to give up first-round draft picks to get him, or would you go with a Garrett? Which 2 players? If you look at, I mean, I would love to get both of them. And the Commanders do have the salary cap, and with it going up a little bit, they do have money to possibly get both of these players, or maybe one of them. They have other areas to plug. But if you could get one of those players, I think you do yourself good.
Yeah, I'm just waiting. I just want Myles Garrett. I don't need the other one.
I want him too, because
that's all I want.
I think that Myles Garrett ship is sailed.
No, it hasn't. Actually, there's a word. No, they made the call. Like this, a report just came out.
Yeah,
a report just came out. They just called the Browns. Nah, and we ain't gonna do that. What we gonna do is act like it can't happen. We ain't gonna do that.
Adam Peters and company are working some magic, because this front office, they're not saying what's going on. That's the great thing about that. I said one thing about teams is they talk too much about what they're going to do. And the Commanders last year, for the most part, we knew we were going to get Jaden Daniels or somebody. But the thing about this Commanders team, they did not disclose out there at the combines what they were really doing, because they said that they have a lot. Who would have thought that Deebo Samuels would have been here in Washington too? So I think that Washington is looking at Cincinnati, who's going to give them that deal. They're looking at Cleveland also. So I don't think any door is closed right now between those 2 players.
I mean, you mentioned Deebo. We're gonna be jumping around to back and forth. I might as well stick in the lane that you went on. Deebo, the Commanders, they got Deebo Samuels. They traded away a 5th-round pick to acquire him. Your thoughts on the acquisition?
I kind of like it, because they didn't have to give up much, a 5th-round draft pick to get a Deebo Samuels. But the key thing is, what Deebo Samuels will you have coming in here with the Commanders? Because you look at his season since 2021, when he had 1,405 yards, 6 touchdowns. He averaged about 18.2 yards per catch. And then it was a drop off after that, because 2022 was only 600 and some yards, 2 touchdowns. 2023, 892, 14.9 average, 7 touchdowns. And last year, only 670 yards, 13.1 yards per catch, and 3 touchdowns. So the key thing too is injuries too, because he's been nicked up a lot. But you know what? He's talking about a fresh start with the Commanders. Talking to them, Adam Peters knows him, and some of the coaching staff knows him. And you can't take away that he is a quality receiver that will complement a Terry McLaurin. So that's what you're looking at. And everybody talks about his weight. He said, yes, I'm 200 and some plus pounds and so forth. But we know that during the offseason, some players get out of shape. But I think having a new leash on life, to be with the Commanders, have a quarterback like Jaden Daniels that can get you the ball, and this new regime with this Washington team and what they did last year, I think that he fits in here. And now the other question is, what do you do with a De'Ami Brown who's a free agent for the first time? I mean, do you sign him back? Because the thing about Deebo Samuels is that he has been injured, so you still need to have backup players on this team. And then Olamide Zaccheaus is another guy. Do you go with him again? Because you still have to plug in the receivers, not just with Terry and Deebo Samuels, but you've got to have other guys out there. You got Luke McCaffrey also there that last year, to me, he showed some signs of being that he was getting going, but then it was like he was shut down and we didn't really see him in the mix of the offense that much. So I'm curious to see what he plays like this year in order to be plugged in. So when you look at Deebo Samuels, and if you can sign De'Ami Brown, Olamide Zaccheaus, and then you got Luke McCaffrey, I think that you'll be in good shape as far as offensive wide receiver. But it just, free agency comes and these players move on if the money is right and they're looking at their opportunity. But I know De'Ami Brown told me at the end of the season that he does want to be back in Washington. It just depends on how it all plays out.
Some money, right? My man Paul said De'Ami ship is sailed, and he's a De'Ami supporter.
I
so
tend to agree with him on that.
And Paul is a De'Ami supporter. I think he thinks that De'Ami may be going elsewhere.
That may be a possibility, but you just don't know, because sometimes the grass is not as green on the other side, and sometimes that even if taking lesser money, depending on what the Commanders are willing to pay out, I think that will be the key if De'Ami Brown stays, or if somebody looks at him to say, hey, over here, because he really wants to play. Yeah. So I mean, he still will play behind Deebo Samuels, but just how much, I don't know. But a second year in this Commanders offense, you look at it to be better with some of the players that they're going to plug in. So I'm not for sure 100% that De'Ami Brown is gone, but it just depends on numbers.
Yeah, I think I want to agree with you on Don. I think Todd said as well. It's all about the money bill. What will De'Ami be willing to take to stay with the Washington Commanders, right? Is he going to take less money? Because let's be honest, if the season started today, it will probably be Deebo Samuels and Terry McLaurin on the field at the same time. And so that will be, put De'Ami in the background as well as Zaccheaus if he comes back. So, but Washington's looking to make other moves, and I agree with you. Deebo has to stay healthy, right? That's the question with Deebo Samuels coming to Washington. That's why Washington was able to get him for a 5th-round pick, right? San Francisco didn't believe him anymore. Let's be honest. When you give a quality guy like Deebo Samuels up for a 5th-round pick, that means the organization does not believe in you. The organization doesn't think they can do better without you. And we know that San Francisco had to free up some money anyway because they got to sign a quarterback. They got to pay their quarterback. So again, what is expendable, and they have that issue. But you know what I want to say? What are some of the young guys? Who are some, besides the guys that you named? Who are some of the young guys, maybe young receiver or that might have caught your eye in the draft, or a young offensive lineman, besides the top 3 that may not be there with Washington that you like?
Yeah, I mean, doing the draft and everything, Washington probably won't look over the receiver until down in the lower draft picks that they have. So, I mean, they're not going to probably get a receiver until some of the lower rounds if they get them there. I don't think that they're going to pay a lot of money elsewhere to get another receiver, even some of the younger ones. But when you think about it, Washington really does not have to go out and look for another receiver, because you look at this, I'm looking at like Terry, and we say Deebo Samuels, but we forgot about Noah Brown also, who was on the roster, got hurt, nicked up. They've got him. Like I said, Luke McCaffrey, Jamison Crowder, if they sign him back, special teams player right there. So Washington, we talked about Deebo Samuels and Terry being your starters. But if you remember, Washington really used quite a bit of their receivers in that offense last year, along with the tight ends. So if they didn't have to do anything with the receiver core from this point, and I know you said, what are some of the other younger guys and so forth that may want to come here to Washington? I know T. Higgins was one of the guys that everybody wanted, but that ship has sailed, I think, also because he wanted too much money. But I think that I would leave this receiving core like it is right now because I think that if Deebo Samuel comes in here, works hard, gets in shape, and so forth, that you're going to see him probably have that season that he had in 2021. And that's what Washington is looking for, is that can Deebo Samuel have that year where he was over 1,000 yards, 6 touchdowns, and so forth. And then, he has to be able to come in here. And as they told me last year, some of the players, it was no prima donnas on this team last year. And that's going to be key also, how he kind of like blends in with the brotherhood here. So, I mean, I would personally, to me, if you could get De'Ami Brown back that knows the offense already, and you don't have to kind of like fine tune another guy coming in here trying to learn it, I think that you'll be good. And I saw somebody said Torrey Holt, a guy later round. Mm-hmm. Possibly, but I'm just saying that Washington has so many other areas to plug in. We didn't even talk about running back, that I think that right now, Washington may be looking at to beef up their running back core a little bit more. And, you go back to the offensive line also. If you have a solid offensive line, you could possibly use the running backs that you have here, because Austin Eckler stays healthy, not concussion-wise, that he was out last year. And once you get a concussion, you're more acceptable to that. So to me, you almost have to get another running back in there, even if you decide to keep Brian Robinson, and then Chris Rodriguez, McNichols. To me, you got to kind of like address that position also, more so than looking at plugging in another wide receiver. So I think that running game is so key. We looked at, ask Philadelphia, Saquon Barkley, ask the Baltimore Ravens, Derrick Henry, and some of the other guys with solid running games. You got to be able to basically, be a monster in the backfield as far as getting that going. So that's another area. It's not at the top of my list, but it's still on my radar that you probably want to plug in another running back.
Hey, Glenn, I'm gonna let you go with the running back because you already know who you need to talk about, Glenn. You on mute. You on mute, Glenn. I'm gonna let you on mute. Go ahead. I'm gonna let you go.
I'll tell you who's the guy. I'm gonna tell you the guy who's the guy, and it's Travion Henderson. If that kid is on the board at 29, you take that kid. I just left a banquet tonight where he talked about his faith with God and everything else. At an FCA banquet, for those Fellowship of Christian Athletes banquet, I have privy to, and you can see here that the Washington Commanders had reached out to some people in Hopewell, where Travion is from, to find out about his character, and so he is on their board. So if he's at 29 and they're ready, I think they might pull that trigger. And
if they pull that trigger, I'm going to scream, because they're going to pull that trigger for a defensive lineman. I mean, to running back. To run, I mean, he may be great running back wise, but it is not the first pick I'm picking at 29. It better be a defensive player or an offensive lineman.
But Don, I think they're gonna feel they need. I think they're gonna feel a defensive need in free agency. Here in the next couple of days, when free agency open up, I think they will be able to fit that need for defensive linemen in free agency. Because we look at it, you got to do what helps Jaden Daniels is one, a running game. We know this team's running game disappeared in the playoffs. This team,
lineman helps Jaden Daniels more so than the skill set players. They got to be able to protect him more so than having a running back in the backfield. And even if the Washington Commanders get a defensive lineman, one of those guys through free agency, they still need another one, because they've got to shore up that defense a lot more than what it is now. One player is not going to get the job done. And and I'm telling you, if they're not getting a defensive lineman, it better be an offensive lineman.
Oh,
go ahead, Glenn.
No, I agree. I think they do need defensive and offensive linemen. But I go with Wole, what we talk about all the time. Sometimes you have to take the best player on the board, even though over your need. And I think that's the case. I know what your need is. And at 29, this team has to get linemen, but I bring Brandon Sheriff back, right? You fill up, you take care of your offensive lineman needs. So you can do a lot of things in the free agency market. But for one deal, and you can still get a quality guy in the draft, a young guy in the draft. Because let's be honest, Brian Robinson, you mentioned earlier, Brian Robinson missed games this year. Austin Eckler got a concussion issue this year. Wasn't
he
so
always had concussion issues though. He always has concussion issues.
Yeah, but you don't know how he's gonna. And Brian Robinson had played a whole football season with the Washington Commanders since he's been there. So so productivity wise, and I'm not so just on a running back issue, but I'm just saying you have to be able to build what you have and take the best player on the board. And if the best player's on the board, if that kid, they can help you out because your running back's a little shaky. Because let's be honest, the running what won it for Philadelphia, what got Philadelphia? It was a strong running back. Because Saquon, without you take Saquon Barkley off that Philadelphia Eagles team, you don't have running games over stuff. So you have to look at that. I understand. I'm an offensive line guy and a defensive line guy. Build an offensive defensive line, but I think there's enough people out there in free agency with the Washington. Washington has enough money; they can get free agents. Do it in free agency.
But this is the thing about free agency. You don't want to mortgage your team in free agency with so many other players because everybody is looking at the Washington Commanders are with their salary cap. They're like, oh man, they got money to spend, but they got so many holes to look at too. Remember, they got 47 players on this roster right now, and they have to sign some of those 1-year players that they had last year. So as much as Washington has a lot of money, you can't mortgage the team in free agents because you're talking about some of those players in free agency are going to want big time money. With Myles Garrett, you think you're going to get him for a few dimes? No. As far as Cincinnati's defensive guy, no. So you build some of this through the draft. And Brandon Scherff, you got to look at age also because the Commanders right now is one of the youngest teams in the NFL. So to me, Brandon Scherff, does he fit into this Washington package now? Because we're throwing out names and everything, but for this Commanders team is that they have to first fit into the scheme of what Washington is trying to do. Brandon Scherff, we know what he was when he was a former Washington Commanders, and we know what he was, with his present team. But my thing is you got to look at all avenues. And I know we say about the best player on the board. Well, guess what? Some of those defensive players and offensive players, as far as linemen in the trenches, will be on the board at 29.
Yeah, I want Mo. Go ahead. I want Mo to go. Mo hasn't spoken yet. Go, Mo.
Oh, yeah. Unmute yourself.
I'll mute Mo. Go ahead, Mo. Go ahead, Mo.
I'm with you 1,000%. With no vested interest in this team, I'll say like everybody else, right? I feel like prior to knowing what's going to happen with free agency, that defensive end position with the number of talented prospects that are coming out that's going to be available, even if they spread across the first round, you're probably going to end up with one that has a lot of upside. Similar to Mike Green out of Marshall. I think that Pierce just played himself about 10 spots up from Tennessee when he ran that 4.47. So I think he's out of the picture. Green has a little bit of he has a little bit of baggage that he's going to have to answer questions about. But if they do their due diligence similar to what they did last offseason, I think there's a lot of upside with that kid. And, people look at, he went to Marshall, but he's really a UVA kid, right? He's really that kind of pedigree of kid. He got in a situation where he had to go to Marshall. But then even at Marshall, he did what you're supposed to do if you're supposed to be the best player at that kind of level. He led the NCAA in sacks, and he was a consensus second-team All-American, right? I think that if you don't go DN there, I think the next position that you can actually go to improve this team would be a defense, would be a DB, actually. I think if you go corner there, you get a quality guy that can start at 29. You can move Mikey around, right? Because we know Lattimore also has injury issues over the last 3 years, even though he was traded for midseason, right? So I think if you save some money in free agency to bolster the offensive line, because we know protecting JD5 is top priority, right? They don't need anything to happen to that kid, right? You go corner or you go D-end over there. I think Travion Henderson is a hell of a talent and player. He's an explosive player, which this team does need in the run game because Brian Robinson is slow as molasses. I'm sorry. It is what it is with him. The first year, it was the incident on 8th Street. The second year was Eric Bieniemy doesn't run him well. Last year was confidence, whatever. It's always something. He's a perennial 750-yard running back. Let's call it what it is, even though they like him. He's just not. He's not a franchise guy. We keep talking about Saquon and things like that. He is not of that pedigree. He's nowhere close to that pedigree. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of running backs in this draft, though, right? Like Omarion Hampton out of North Carolina. You got Caden Johnson out of Iowa if you want a bigger body, right? If you want a bigger body that has some explosiveness coming out of the Big Ten, you know he's going to get a lot of he's used to getting a lot of carries, and he can handle it with his 6'1", 220-pound frame, right? And he can catch the ball out of the backfield. So I think because running backs are so plentiful in this draft, and the first big domino that's going to happen is where does Ashton Genty go? That the team definitely, as Donna said, should go defensive end or DB secondary.
So it's funny.
Go ahead, George.
It's funny if anybody was watching this stream and didn't know Washington's record last year, you'd think they were 6-11 or 5-12, because look at all the different areas that everybody's made a great case for. Bo's talking about corner. Donna Hopkins is talking about defensive tackle and offensive line, and just about any offensive line position that's not center. Glen's talking about running back. You know, it's amazing that we're talking about a 12-5 football team that was one game away from the Super Bowl, and yet you could go in about 5 or 6 different directions with this pick. So this is what I want to ask everybody, but Donna specifically, because you said at the start of what you were saying, I don't want to move back, I don't want to move up. I feel like this team's got to move back. And this conversation that we're having, it shows it. They have so many needs they have to fill, and you can't fill them all in free agency, and they're not going to, because they got to save money for what may come for next year and the year after that and the year after that as well. I feel like a move down is the best move they can make, even if it means they're giving up that 5th-year option.
Well, the funny thing about it, George, that you said is that we're all on here talking like the Commanders wasn't 12-5. Hey, when talking to Dan Quinn out at the combine, he specifically said as far as improvement from last year in moving forward, and it's a lot of areas that even Lance said it's a lot of areas that they still have to get better at. And even though this team was 12-5, when we look at the defensive side of the ball, could not stop the run. And they were successful because of what Jayden Daniels did on the offensive side of the ball in moving the ball. So as much as they were 12-5, when you really dissect this team, it's a whole bunch of areas that they've got to get better in order to move forward. And you measure it by the team in your division, which is the Philadelphia Eagles. And we say that if you take away a Saquon Barkley, this team is not as good. But guess what? They're still going to be good on that defensive side of the ball. They're still going to be able to plug. And on the offensive side, they're still going to be pretty successful also because they got their quarterback in place too. And running back wise, you can get a good running back on down in the draft. And the only way that I move down in the draft is I'm going to get 3 or 4 picks from that moving down. And only about moving down is, will some of those players still be on the board on the defensive side of the ball? And I'm only talking defensive side of the ball or the offensive line. Will those players, because it's a heavy draft, like I said, as far as the defensive side of the ball and basically linemen. So will some of those key players that will be able to come immediately, you can't have players 2 or 3 years on down the line being productive, but this Commanders team have to get players that can come in quickly and move this team forward. Because when I talked to some of the defensive coaches last year, they told me, I said, hey, you're getting some of the Cowboys players, bringing them along with you because you want to be able to jumpstart this team quickly. So this Commanders, according to where they pick at or who they pick, they have to be able to have improvement right away in this team moving forward if they're going to be as good as they were last year at 12-5. Or what you said, George, they were 1 game away from the Super Bowl. Well, we're hoping that if they plug in right players, that they can make it into the Super Bowl. But it's going to be harder this year because when you look at their schedule, so you have to look at, putting these pieces together with the schedule that they have this year too, because it's not an easy one. And some main needs as far as that. Running backs, you can get them a dime and a dozen for the most part. Maybe not the ones at the top of your list, but you can have a running back that is a diamond in the rough that comes in here and able to help this team. But when I talk to Coach Quinn and the GMs and everything, to me, they're looking at, hey, we're starting all over again. They've got that mentality that we have to start all over and really assess this whole team again. Of course, they got the quarterback in place, and that's a key thing. But outside of that, and then they get a Deebo Samuel, so they plug in another area that they needed to be better at. And we don't know how that's going to play out, but at least they said, hey, we got a guy that can come in here if he – get in shape and do all those necessary things that he has to. We got that area contained, but some of the other ones that they don't, it's a defense that gave up too many yards running the ball, and an offensive line that really held together for the most part, but still did not protect Jayden Daniels on down the stretch because he was running for his life. And thank God he has legs like he does, or else he would have been in trouble. So that's the reason why I say that you have to start in the trenches on that side, offensive line and defensive line. And DB, you can get better there too, because Benjamin St. Juste possibly won't be here next year. Then you have what's the other guy? I can't even pronounce his name.
Igbinoghene.
Oh, Noah.
Igbinoghene. Thank you, George. And so
just say Noah.
Even Noah, but I like to say their whole names. But even with those guys, you got to get a Mikey Sanders still. To me, he came in and you were like, whoa, Mikey played that position solid. And on the outside, everybody is talking about moving Mikey back in the inside. You could if you had to, but the coaches actually like him on the outside.
It was good outside. It was great outside. No. Oh, you on mute, bro. Hold on. Go ahead. I got you. Hold on. I did because I was hearing feedback. Go ahead, Mo.
I just mentioned corner because of the history of Marshawn Lattimore and his injuries over the last couple of years. I think that because you don't want to bend St. Juste on the field, right? You got to have some kind of insurance policy there. But we're a week early.
Absolutely right.
We're definitely a week early with this conversation because on Tuesday the whole board could change as to what the draft is going to look like based off how many people come, right? But like my second idea for what this team should do was actually what George said. But Donna, what if I said that you could trade back with those like teams like last year when Buffalo traded back a couple of picks, like 4 or 5 picks, and still ended up with the player that they wanted at wide receiver? What about trading up? What if you could trade up into the top 10 picks of the second round, and right now you're without a 4th round or a 5th round pick that you used in trade, right? Those are like vital pieces for draft day trades also when you want to position yourself when you see players, right? Similar to what they did for Mikey last year. So would it be beneficial then to you? Do you think if they can get it, if they can stay within the first 10 picks of the second round, then have 2 second-round picks would still be a quality? That'd be still a top 60 player, 2 top 60 players, and then gain a 3rd round, gain a 4th rounder, or make up that 4th and 5th combination somewhat to have a more full draft so they can do some things on the back end. How would that sound to you?
No, I think the Commanders is looking at all those options and everything only if their player is still on the board, because I'm sure that right now they have players on the board that they want, whether it's the defensive line, offensive line, or where that is. But the key thing I think that we have to look at is what do they get in free agency? That's going to be the telltale whether they move back in the draft. Because if they can plug in some of those needed areas, let's just say if it is a running back and they can get one in free agency that's going to be able to come in and help this team. If it is another defensive back that they're able to plug in here and have that, and I think that will be predicated on where this Washington Commanders team moved back in the draft. So I think when they look at the whole draft, the first round, and they say, hey, this player is projected to go to this team and so forth. And Buffalo was one of those times where they ended up getting who they wanted because it just fell that way. We know that doesn't always happen. So I think that the Commanders probably have 4 or 5 players on their list that they say, hey, if this player is projected to be right here, then more than likely they could move down in the draft so that they could have more players. But I just kind of like want to see how savvy they are as far as in free agency, because again, a lot of players want to come to Washington, and they may want to come to Washington for not a large tag on them. Remember last year, Washington signed a lot of first-year players, only 1-year contracts, and they got some pretty good players in here that was able to help this team. So I don't think Washington may sign some of these players, depending on who they are, to long contracts, because even Bobby Wagner's contract for this coming year is only for 1 year.
Mhm.
And so when you look at some of the other players that they may sign, it may be for 1 year for as far as free agency goes. So I think it just depends on how aggressive they are in free agency and who they can bring in here, and the dollar amount that is will predicate on where they move within the draft.
I'll let you go, Mo. Go ahead, Mo. Go ahead, Mo.
Okay, I know we're talking about free agency, right? And they have this big lump sum of money, but don't you think that an extension for Terry has to cut into that? Because I think like next year is the last year of his money.
Yeah, both of him and Deebo
right?
are free agents.
So like now that he's an All-Pro, a certified All-Pro, the going rate for a certified All-Pro at that position is $30 million. So I think that there's this idea out there that there's a lot of money to be had, and like the draft. I think we're putting the emphasis on the draft because that money is going to get spent a lot. It's going to be a lot larger lump sums of money being spent this offseason versus last year when you brought in 23 new players or 33 new players? Or
Yeah,
so?
it was
33 new players last year.
33 new players.
It was a lot of new players on this roster.
33 new players.
Mo, to your point, I didn't even mention that because you're right. They're trying to work on an extension for Terry, knowing that next year is going to be his year. So I think they're working on that now. I know that was on the radar today. I heard about that there's possibly a deal working on the extension for Terry to be here a little longer. So I think that's part of the deal with all of this that we're talking about, because they do have money to spend to re-sign him to a longer contract. So that's one guy, along with some of the other pieces that they're going to be working on in this offseason. So yes, you do want to have Terry with the year that he had, and you're looking for him to have probably a solid year being in this offense with Jayden Daniels this year. So yeah, I think that you do work that deal so that, and you probably will get Terry a lot cheaper if you work that extension now than letting it wait until next year.
No, I agree. I agree with Taj's point. You extend and guarantee the first 3 years, spread the money so it won't be a salary cap hit, number hit. Yeah, you just got to spread it out. I mean, that's Adam Peters' job. I'm not a salary cap person. So I'll add this in terms of like the draft 29. This is my thought process. And it's really in terms of when you're drafting this far back. If the position you need ain't way better than that dude of real value, I'm getting that player who's really, really good. The player, if it's about your position in need, it got to match or be close to that player's value, that the best player at 29. Because we mentioned all of this stuff in terms of like what position is needed, this, that, and the other. So to Glen's point, is Travion Henderson's up there. And there's a defensive rush. There's a defensive end. There's a rush. There's a edge rusher out there. But that person is not even close in terms of the ability of a Travion Henderson. I would either, to Mo's point, trade back, or I'm just drafting Travion Henderson. I'm not getting a player lesser than at that position just because it's a position that need at 29. I can probably maybe flex because the talent is a little different we're talking about top 10, because the talent, obviously the individual should be more talented. But we're at 29, and we say it's a Travion Henderson is probably like a rusher that could have been in the second round or third, like on a second round kind of assessment, I'm going to take the running back. Hold on, I you on mute because there's a feedback.
So you're talking about a running back in the draft that's not proven, and not saying that he won't be great and everything. And sometimes maybe you look at a running back that's already proven in free agency that you can get also. So my thing about the draft is the players are like college players. They play pretty great, some of them not so great. So you're taking a chance in the draft because you don't know what you're getting in some of the positions and so forth. So I'm with you as far as if that defensive player is not one that can make your team better and everything, then you go that. But let me tell you again, the defense is the strongest this draft. And more than likely, it's going to be somebody at 29 that's going to be a top player versus getting a running back. I'm not saying that Henderson, does he make your team better coming here with what Washington already has? Can he immediately? We thought that with Lynn, that basically that Coach Lynn, that we said, I mean, he made this running back group so much better by him being here with their skill sets and everything. But my thing is still that we look at what the suit is for the draft. And this year is defensive side of the ball. So my thing is it's going to be somebody at 29 position. And if you can move down and one of those players that you probably have on your list is still there, then you can move down. I'd rather you do that versus getting a person that's not proven where you already got running back. They may not be may not be at the top of your list, but I'm still looking at the draft to say, hey, who's out there running back wise as far as free agency? I'm still, no matter how you spin it, I'm still going with the defensive line.
I ain't mad at you. I know how you think, Donna, so I ain't mad at you. I'm
not mad at you either. I'm not mad at you. I'm a defensive person. I think this team could have went further if they was able to stop some people on the defensive side of the ball. We know that, especially with coming out today that Jonathan Allen's looking to be traded, or the Washington Commanders are looking to get rid of Jonathan Allen either through a trade or they're going to release him, right? So you need that D lineman. You need some guy. But my thing is, can you, to Wole's point, a D lineman who comes in that you draft, can you plug him in and be your day one starter? You know, we see how long it took Johnny Newton to get to that. I don't think you can do that with a D lineman. Now, you could probably get an offensive lineman and plug him in as be your starter from day one. But again, there's some offensive linemen that weren't bad last year, right? They weren't terrible. To George's point, we talked about how we all having this conversation about this team as if they wasn't 12-5. Where they took the 12-5, they band-aided and pieced some things together to get this team to be 12-5. So you have those pieces and parts that we need to get to establish a team to make them better. But sometimes you need that home run hitter to complement a Deebo Samuels, to complement a Terry McLaurin, to complement Austin Eckler. And I think sometimes it's just like baseball. Sometimes you want the guy that can hit the long ball.
Hey, Glen, let me.
Here she go.
I ain't letting you off the hook there. The reason why the home run hitter would be a defensive lineman. I mean, to me, when you talk about Johnny Newton, let's talk about him. Remember, I think some of his, as far as him getting out of the gates fast, was because he was hurt. He had the foot injury at the start of camp, and he went through most of camp. He came back a little bit at camp. Then he re-injured the foot. Then he had to be out a longer time. So some of that, as far as the key things that he would have gotten, was in training camp when he was out. So I think that if you had a Johnny Newton in there a whole training camp, you would have saw a different player, because by the time the season started, he was still playing catch up. And by the time the season ended, he was probably coming in a little bit of his groove. So my thing again is, what makes this team better? When you look at a defense that was 30 ranked and 24th on the run, and then they gave up over 200 yards, and then they were ranked down there in defense overall. They got better in some positions, but It's the line play, because you think about it, linebacker play was better this year for the first time in like forever with that linebacking group. Then you got solid safety play from Quan Martin and Jeremy Chin. And then you got Percy Butler that didn't even get on the field, where the coaches said that he probably could be a starter somewhere else. And then you got, as far as and the thing about it is, everybody looked at the cornerback position and say, man, they're getting beat and whatever. But if it was some pressure up front, or where they had a little time to cover their guys, then they wouldn't have struggled as much. So it doesn't matter about if you got solid talent back there, if you don't have the quality play up front with a defensive line in the trenches, then you can only be so good as cornerback. So you shored up that a little bit more with Michael Sanders still, and then Marshawn Lattimore. And the key thing is that he came to Washington hurt with that hamstring. So you really didn't see him at full speed for that whole season. I want to see him when he comes in here, works with this training staff and so forth, with that hamstring and all that, to get him back up. And then you get another guy just to shore it up a little bit more. So for the second area of the defense, they're pretty good in what they have right now, just getting that other corner. It's the front of the defense that they have to get way better in play both ways, defensive ends on both sides, and then a guy in the middle. You're talking about 3 players to get better right there, where we're talking about a running back group that's already, you got some guys that can still get the job done. If you get an offensive line, as far as some solid player up front that can protect Jayden and also open up the holes for that running game, because when you look at Washington's running game with what they had, they were not bad. They were ranked 7th in week 14 as far as their running game. So my thing is that, yes, you could add another plug in, but I'm not going to have them be a guy that I draft first in there. Will Henderson make this team better with what they got?
Yeah, he would. He's way better than them dudes, Donna. I'm not.
Hey, Wally,
he's way better than them dudes, Donna. Like I like Donna. I like
the line to block. Don't he have
look, Donna, sometimes all you got to do, like what he can do, the stuff that Eckler, and God bless Eckler, but Father Time is undefeated. God bless him, but Father Time is undefeated.
Hey, Wally, that's what they said last year. What did
it showed because the ones he took, the ones he got stopped, he would have took to the house. It showed like he didn't give you some spurts, but as the season went on, Father Time was like, hey, you ain't 25, bro. You ain't 25 no more. You ain't 25 no more.
Hey, Wally. They better not get nothing but offensive linemen and defensive linemen.
Look, I'm just saying, Donna, I'm with you. Like, I'm not gonna lie to you. I agree with a lot of your points. So
if they get that running back, I'm coming to strangle you.
You should come and when he take the first 5-yard screen to the house, you gonna call me and say, "Hey, Wally, what you say? He's really good." I'm like, I told you so.
Say, man, that line didn't even block from him. He couldn't even get through it.
But I will say, Donna, I agree with you on that, because I think this thing. And I'm trying to say this to protect Jayden Daniels, because you talk about protecting Jayden Daniels, right? If you talk about the offense being 7th in running and week 7 being ranked 7th in rushing, a lot of those rushing yards came from Jayden Daniels.
Hello, you're right.
So in order to protect him, we gotta. I know the guys zone packages and zone reads, but he has to have not only an offensive line, but he has to be able to have a running back to help him out as well in those, so he does not have to pull the ball as much as he has to give the ball.
Yeah, he pulls a lot.
So he pulls a lot. So I just think we're talking the same thing. I hope they get the offensive lineman and be able to get Henderson too, or get a key running back too. Whether it's Henderson or not, I'm not biased. Whether it's a running Washington, as George said, this team needs a lot.
Hey, Glenn, this is what Washington has on the offensive line right now. Tyler Biadasz played key. He was a center. When he went out with that injury, that offense did not go, because he is your signal caller and all of that. So he was the most important person on that offensive line, because he came in here. He had solid play. Then you got Nick Allegretti, Sam Cosby. We're talking about a guy that probably won't start the season. So that's the reason why I said the offensive line is so key to have some more players plugged in there. You had Chris Paul, Andrew Wiley. I think that you need a guy over there. with Andrew Wiley. Then you have Brandon Coleman, should be better in his second year, but I think he's a true guard versus the tackle. And Cornelius Lucas, you got him, and then Trent Scott. So tell me why we don't need more offensive linemen right there to really protect a Jaden Daniels even more, because Jaden sometimes didn't even have time enough to throw the ball, and the passing game suffered a lot. So I just think that if you shore up this offensive line, you're going to be better all the way around.
I'm Mo.
Donna, I'm with you. I'm with you in building in one of the trenches, right? I just don't think that when I think about the draft and I think about the capital that they have for free agency, I think a lot of that money is going to be spent in the trenches, right? I think the trench, especially the offensive line, I think the offensive line is going to be upgraded with veterans rather than rookies, right? You're not gonna, you don't build you don't strike the iron hot twice or three times with Brandon Coleman to have a good offensive line. You get that good mix, right? You traded for Biotis last year. You know you got Coleman. He was more than serviceable at left tackle last year. But you do know he has that all-line versatility where he can play that guard. Now, if you can get one of the better tackles that are available, now you're more intrigued than putting him back at his natural position of guard, because now you've solidified at least one side of the line, right? We know that Cosme's out. So you know they're going to spend money on an offensive guard because they got to get a guy that can come in here and start from day one because Cosme's gone. So I think the money on the offensive line is going to be I think offensive line is going to be handled through free agency for the most part, unless there's just a surefire pick at one of the 29 picks. This team has three. Right now we can only count on the 3 picks that they have in the top 80. Right? So I don't see that being offensive line. You don't go trying to get a starting offensive lineman in the 3rd round. So I do feel that I do understand where you're coming from. I do think that that's going to happen, but I think that's happening in free agency more so. So I think that's why. Yeah, and I think that's why they're so intrigued with the speed back. I don't think Travion Henderson is the 29th best player in the draft in the first place. So I don't think he's going to be the pick. And I really think that the running back, if a running back comes to Washington, is going to be dependent upon where Ashton Genty gets picked. Ashton Genty is going to be the biggest domino in the running back market in terms of everybody keeps saying that, but that's going to be tough.
Hey, why would he want to go to that team?
That's where he wants to go.
But think about it like this. There's a lot of running back needy teams in the later half, right? The Chargers need a running back. They could possibly use a running back, right? Because they built up their front already, and their running backs continue to get hurt.
They're going receiver though, aren't they? Going receiver?
But there's a lot of receivers on the open market for the Chargers.
I heard they definitely going. But go ahead though.
Yeah, for sure. Travion Henderson is probably the 5th best running back in this draft.
5th?
He's not better than Caden Johnson. He might have more speed, but he's not better than
Johnson. But that's a whole different. He had to split carries. He had to split carries and still had like over.
My point exactly. He may not even be better than his teammate.
He better than Junkins. He better than Junkins for real.
I think we value the speed over Junkins, but I can't say because
it's a combination of speed and power. That's all. It's a combination. I'm assessing both. I'm putting two elements together.
The kid didn't start at Ohio State.
Also pass pro.
And pass pro is better. He's better than pass pro.
He's more of an
NFL back than Junkins is.
He didn't start.
But still was first team all Big Ten.
Okay. I'm going off of what we know, right?
I'm saying first team all Big Ten.
He's probably the 4th. At best, he's the 4th best running back in the draft.
I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say he's the 2nd best running back in the league. I think that you can get him in the 2nd round. I definitely think in the 2nd round.
I just don't think 4 running backs are going in the top 29.
I agree with that. I will agree with that. I agree with that.
So I don't think he's going to be the one there. Like, if any running back gets picked at 29, depending on where Genty goes, it's probably going to be Omarion Hampton.
I think he's been at Hampton. He's on Hampton from out of what's the name, right? Hampton out of
Carolina.
Carolina. I thought those were Carolina. He better get Hampton, but it's okay.
Yeah, you all know what happened last year. So last year it was heavy quarterback. First time that many quarterbacks have gone in there. So most teams, if you think about it, it's defensive heavy. Though I think that it's going to be those picks this year is going to be defensive players that get snatched up and tight ends, because they've got some good tight ends out there also in the draft this year. So I look at it as being defensive heavy for those first probably 15 or so picks, offensive linemen, and also tight ends. I don't think the running backs are going to be some of the guys at the top of the leaderboard.
I don't know if it's tight end either, though, Donna. I think it's wide receiver. I think you're going to see more wide receivers go in the first round than people think.
In today's NFL, yeah.
Especially with the speed. I think it's going to, like to your point, I think it's going to be D linemen. And because there's only really two quarterbacks that most people are going to want, Jackson Dart might insert himself in the conversation because somebody's always going to reach, right? Somebody's always going to reach. But, like, because we're not going to have 6 quarterbacks like last year's draft, to your point, a lot of defensive players are going to go. There's a lot of linebackers in this draft that can go, that can play ball also. So when I look at 29, I'm more so on your side. It has to be an edge rusher.
I agree. I actually agree with that. I'm not going to argue. I agree with that.
It's going to have to be an edge rusher, like an impact edge rusher that falls a little bit further than expected because these wide receivers start trickling in, right? You're going to have your Genties. You're going to have there's a couple of DBs in here too. Travis is going to go. Will Johnson is going to go.
Yeah, Will Johnson could go. DBs,
you know what I mean?
I think there is some value there.
I
think you can get some really good. I think there's to Mo's point, I do think, there are some very talented DBs that could slip.
Yeah.
To Washington, just like you look at like the Ravens. The Ravens got Wiggins from Clemson last year, who slipped all the way to them. You know what I mean? Right. I mentioned how, and I already mentioned that what the Eagles did. But in terms of like, you're gonna get a situation because of edge rusher and DBs, you can group them together. Because somebody's gonna value an edge rusher more than a DB. So somebody good is gonna drop to Washington in terms of DB or edge rusher. That could definitely happen. I agree with you, Mo, because
I think that's a higher probability.
Yeah, because you look at I'm a Michigan fan, so obviously people know that Johnson can slip all the way. He's at 20, like on mocks. At first, he was a top 10 pick.
It's not happening.
I don't think so either. But I'm just saying, I'm giving an example of like that's how chaotic. Like in terms of that is like in terms like pass rusher. Graham was rated to be a top 10 D lineman. Now a lot of folks got him late 20 half. So I'm just saying, like that's how. I'm just agreeing with to Mo's point because they're so grouped together. Because like you said, Don, it's so deep at edge rusher, it's so deep in D lineman. There are some really good cornerbacks that can pay for that, and you may get one that slips all the way down to you. So it goes to a point where it goes to my premise again. Like if you have your grade and your grade says this is a starter, this is an impact player that he slipped to you, and if you're Washington, you just assess it and say, you know what, this is an impact player. This is a starter. Like this ain't a player. This is a player that we expect it to be somewhere else, not reaching us.
He fell in our lap.
Yeah, we got to take him. Like we got to take him.
John Allen, if they get a trade for him, they could possibly get a draft pick for him because it's some interest out there, I think, with John Allen right now. So if you could get him traded and get another pick, as Mo said, to add to your list to make you a little more valuable because they don't have a lot of picks in this draft. But if you could get a pick somewhere in the 3rd or whatever round, somewhere or anything, then that's going to help Washington too. So you always have to look at that too. Is John Allen, is a possible, trade for him where you get a draft pick this year, not next year, hopefully this year where you need it more.
So we want to go back before we about to close this draft talk. I'm going to go back to this the main question with Deebo. You want to say something before I switch over?
No, I mean, you hit the point. I had a specific name, but you hit the point. Take the best player. I was just saying that the kid from Texas was there.
Golden. You talking about Golden? Receiver?
Barron.
Barron. Yeah.
If he's there,
yeah.
I know everybody loves Mikey on the outside, but
you just gotta do it.
You have versatility all across the board.
Of course. So, we talked about Deebo and what he can do for this team, but in terms of this combination of Deebo and Terry McLaurin, where would you rank that combination? Not in the whole NFL, I'm not gonna do that, but rank them within the NFC East. That combination of Terry, is it better than the Eagles combination of AJ Brown and Devontae? Is it or because that's
I think it's unknown right now because we don't know which Deebo Samuels is going to come in here and play. We know the Deebo Samuels of 2021, and we know what he's been doing the last couple of years. He hasn't had his solid year. So it's hard to really say until I see him come in here. If he can be that Deebo Samuels of Taz, where he had that 2021 year, I think that you could say that, oh man, they can rank right up there with Philadelphia, because Philadelphia is proven with their guys because they've been together for a while. The New York Giants, they draft their wide receiver last year, and he had a solid year, but they don't have like combination of wide receivers for the Giants, and that team is a train wreck right now and trying to figure out who's going to be their quarterback. And also Dallas is another one of those big question marks too, with that team, with the new head coach, and just that whole roster with Dak hasn't really, coming off the injuries and so forth. So the conversation would be right now between the Washington Commanders and the Philadelphia Eagles. So I think the verdict is still out on the Deebo Samuels until he gets in here and you can really see what kind of player he's going to be. So I can't answer that right now, Wally, because I have a question mark there. I'm one of those people that prove me. Let me see. I'm not going to put you up on the mountain. I don't care what your name is. You got to come in here and show me what you can do. But guess what? Jaden Daniels is loving to have him here, and he's loving to be here with Jaden Daniels because he knows that he's a proven quarterback. I don't know what the problems was in San Francisco, but as Deebo Samuel said, he left on good ground. He has nothing but love for the 49ers, but I'm sure right now he's got a lot more love for the Washington Commanders.
Now, hey, George, what about you, bro? You said you shook your head no. Why do you say no?
I mean, they're not better than Devontae and AJ Brown. Let's just say that right now. It's good. Even if you get 2021 Deebo, I'm not sure they're better than those two guys.
Oh, no, 2021 Deebo's better. No, they are. The 2021 was an animal. No, right, Mo? Yeah, you 14. Hey, George, 1,400 yards. George, 1,400 yards.
And you know what?
If you can get a Deebo Samuels of 2021.
Yeah, you getting that 14. Yeah, that's different.
I mean, them other two are Super Bowl champions for no reason.
The defensive line, George. We talking about the defense. George, the defense. George, don't forget the defense.
George, I give Deebo Samuels a lot of. I give him a lot of. I get on him a lot, right? But if you get 2021 Deebo Samuels
with Terry
ain't even as good. Terry ain't even better than 2021.
Yeah, that was there. 40 years. 2021 was better than was special.
He had 1,400 yards, but he had 1,000 yards week 8. Until Kyle started. That's when Kyle started handing him the ball.
Yes.
That's the year that Kyle started handing the ball. He was second team All Pro. That was a different guy. Mm-hmm. That was young spry Deebo before he got started. Injuries started adding up. He started adding weight to get in the backfield and all that kind of stuff. And that's why they made that run. They ultimately just lost to the Rams in the NFC Championship because they had Garoppolo as their quarterback.
Let's just not push aside.
No, but you're right.
No, but I'm not going. But I'm not going to do is give the wide receivers credit for them winning the Super Bowl. I'm not going to do that. They won the Super Bowl because their defense. I'm not going to say.
But okay, then give credit for their
defense
production.
Won Super Bowl.
You're right. You're right, George. You're right. You were just right for the wrong reasons, not the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I ain't gonna put
not the Super Bowl then for their production.
AJ Brown is better than Terry McLaurin 1-for-1. And most people would take Devontae Smith today over Deebo Samuel.
Today.
So that leaves the Commanders at number 2 by themselves because no other team in the NFC East has a number 2 wide receiver worth anything. Not the Giants.
Hey, George, you know why I said that it wasn't the wide receivers for Philadelphia in that Super Bowl? Saquon. It was the defense that shut down.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
That's true. That is true.
They made Kansas City look like nothing on offense. Well, that's the reason why my credit has to go to the Philadelphia Eagles defense. But again,
back to Donna's point, get the line together.
5 yards in 2021. 18.2 average per catch and 6 touchdowns. If we can get that Deebo Samuel, they're gonna be nice.
And you ain't gonna get it, but
dude, even 2023 was almost 900 yards.
The only thing that I give Deebo Samuel, I give this to Deebo Samuel. Coming to the Commanders makes sense, right? He is one of those gadget type players and he has the ultimate
Cliff.
gadget type offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
So,
And he's got
yeah,
Peyton Daniels.
that's the next thing. You have a
Yeah.
Jaden Daniels who can extend plays, who can let him run around like his backyard football.
And
He's going to
can
catch a
find
lot
it.
of he's going to catch a lot of crossers. He's gonna do a lot of right now plays. He's going to get the ball out the backfield a little bit. He's going to do a lot of the same things they do with Eckler, but now you can do it with Deebo also. So there's a lot of mismatches across the board. If Cliff is who we think he is,
I know.
then it's going to be that.
Hey,
Hey,
this for you, Mo. This for you, Mo.
Thing
It
is-
says the Commanders might sign Darius Slayton. They better not.
I'm hearing that he's
Hey,
headed
but
over
you know
to
what?
LA.
I had him on my list tonight to mention.
No, he better not.
Quarterback.
He dropped, man. That man dropped, man.
A quarterback.
Y'all get mad at Diami for
I
dropping
don't
passes.
want
You
him.
do not
I
want
don't
Darius
want
Slayton.
him.
Yeah.
do not want
Y'all
Darius
get mad at
Slayton.
Diami for
I don't
dropping
want
passes.
That's the reason
Man.
why I didn't mention him, because I don't want him.
You
I'm
don't
about to
want
say
him.
thank you, Don. Y'all be mad at Diami for dropping
Listen.
passes. Man.
I don't want him.
Darius Slayton, for all intensive purposes, was a 6th-round pick. He is overproduced for being a 6th-round pick, but he is
Facts.
nobody's top 2 wide receiver
Facts.
or 3 wide receiver. Like, he is not that guy.
I'm keeping De'Ami Brown
Over that, yeah, definitely over that.
over him.
Listen, no. I wanted to get to that earlier. You were talking when I was on mute.
Go ahead.
Tell that guy in the top left corner that's hosting the show to stop hating on Luke. This is Luke's opportunity to show you. You can play him on the outside. Now that you have a certified slot receiver, Luke does have a big body at 6'2". He has a frame. He can play backside now. Cliff can get real cute with him, and it can work. It can work if you don't want to pay a lot of money. You got somebody that you drafted. They trust him.
I got a
They have
rebuttal.
to give him. Wole, they have to give him a
But the
chance.
thing about it is, Luke wasn't. I mean, he disappeared in the second half of the season.
They
I don't
have to
know
give him
why
a chance.
they didn't
They
use
give him a
him or
chance, he don't
whatever.
do nothing.
But they gave him a chance when they wanted
Right.
to give him 2.
Wally, let's go back. Luke was pretty productive at the beginning of the season because he
They
made
started
some
him.
big
And
time
he was a
catches.
rookie, Wole.
He made some big time catches, but I want to see how
What
he
catch he made,
does.
Donna?
in
What
the
big catch he
second
made?
Hey, he made some catches over the middle.
What catch? I'm still trying.
Look,
I
look.
mean, Noah Brown.
Hey,
What catch he
I'm gonna
made?
need you to go back and look at the
I
game.
may have to go back because my eyes are maybe I'm
Wally,
blind.
I'm gonna
Maybe.
need you to go back and look at the beginning.
I'm gonna go back. I
Get him,
gotta go
Donna.
back.
Whatever
Get him.
catches he made.
Hold on. Let me,
Yeah,
I'm about to
Donna.
let me look at Luke's stats.
I'm gonna need to wind back the tape on
I
you,
am about
Wally.
to. I'm about to look at Luke McCaffrey.
Donna, get him. He be hating on that
Yeah,
boy for no
I mean,
reason.
I
Hey,
really want to see
Luke-
how Luke does in this second year because a
Yes.
lot of the players,
He's the
Kickoff
one.
return.
uh,
Kickoff
He's the
return.
one.
Return.
the development, and all that. So
I have a question.
He's
I-
the
You
one,
better-
Wole.
you better
He's
go
the
back
one
and
that can
wind
do
Luke
back.
McCaffrey's had
You better
18
go back and
receptions
wind
for
back the
168
tape.
yards. What, really?
He's the one that can.
But Wally, he wasn't a full-time starter.
All right. Look, this is my thing. If Luke McCaffrey's name was Luke Smith, would we care? Would we care for real? If his name was Luke Smith,
You
If he
wouldn't
could
hate on him
play,
so much.
if he could
You
play,
wouldn't hate on him so much if his
If
name
his
was
name was
Luke
Luke
Smith.
Smith, he
if he
would
was
be
Luke
on the
Smith, hey,
team
no,
already.
no what? If his name was Luke Smith, I wouldn't care. You're right. I wouldn't hate because I wouldn't care.
hey,
I wouldn't
Wally,
care who he was. I
as
wouldn't
long as
care.
he can play,
I just wouldn't care.
As long as he can play, I don't care about his name. As long
Donna,
as he can play.
Wole's a troll.
I just don't care about. I'm like, look, he even
Hey,
grew on
Wally,
me
I
though.
just want you
He
to
can't
go
be a
back
third
tomorrow
receiver,
and
Wole.
do your homework.
No, he's a 4th, 5th receiver.
Hey, Wally, I
can't
want
be
you
a
to go
third?
back and do your homework tomorrow.
I'm gonna go back because I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna go back. Luckily I got YouTube TV. I got all these games recorded. I'm gonna go back and watch every little catch, and I'm gonna see all of them 168 yards worth of catches, right? And then I'm gonna sit back and look at him and be like, "Dang, that was a tough catch."
Oh,
Like,
it was-
wow.
let
You know
me
what?
tell you
And I'm
what.
gonna come back and I know he had drops too, Donna. He had some drops. I'm
No,
gonna dissect his
but
drops. too.
guess what? You're going to come back and say, man, he did have some tough catches in there because I can recall a few of them.
I mean, he had some drops too, though.
You telling me you can't
Oh,
put
all the receivers had drops. All the receivers had drops.
They all took their turns dropping the ball.
Look, all
You
I'm
telling
saying
me
is,
that Luke-
look, he's a
telling me-
project. I'm not gonna gas a project. He's what I'm saying.
No,
He's a
I
project.
think that I want to see him in the second year because a lot of the players are projects that will be better in year number 2.
Forget about Luke in the slot. You telling
I like
me
what
Luke
the
can't
Bucks
line
said
a
there.
backside of a play?
Nah, he should be outside though. He shouldn't be outside.
He
No,
can't
not
line a backside
Nah,
of a play
outside.
and run.
Nah, you gotta watch him. He's not an
Mo,
outside dude, bro.
I can't agree with you right
See,
there.
look, even Donna know that.
Okay, Donna, you can't agree with that. You can't put Deebo over there either.
That's why
That's
I'm
not
saying.
Deebo's
No. I'm not even. Why are you putting Luke in this conversation? I know.
Because
You put Luke in this conversation.
I put Luke in the conversation because he's on the roster. He's
No,
actually
I don't.
on the roster.
No, he's not going to be the player. That's it. Like he's not.
He has to
They're
be
going
on
to
a-
sign
he has-
somebody.
he
I
has
don't
to
even know
be
why
on a-
Luke is in your like top 3. He should not even be your top 3. I'm sorry.
Is the kid under contract?
He's not
No,
the
he's not
top
a free
3.
agent.
Okay,
He's
so
not
the
the-
kid.
he's not-
I can only
he's not
talk
free.
about
He's
the
on the
people
roster because he's on the
I can only
roster.
talk about the people that's on the roster,
Oh,
brother.
look.
Hey,
Let's not insult. Let's not insult the front
put
office.
him ahead of Olamide Zacchaeus or Noah Brown or even De'Ami Brown. You can't put him ahead of those.
But Donna, De'Ami Brown is a free agent.
No. Hey, Paul said trade Luke to the Giants. Hey, you can have him.
Send him over. Send him up 95 North.
You can have Luke.
All I want y'all to talk about is defensive linemen and offensive linemen. That's
I
all.
don't know how we get to Luke McCaffrey. How we get to Luke? How we get to Luke?
I don't
It
know
was you,
how
Mo.
we got
I know
there.
it was you. It was your fault. You brought up Luke, didn't you, Mo? It was you.
No, somebody said Luke earlier.
Oh.
And you
That
made
was
a
way
face.
earlier, Mo. That was way earlier, Mo.
I was only getting to that point because there was no. We can't speak of receivers that are not on the team. We have to talk about the ones that the team has.
Right.
That's all I'm doing.
I cannot.
You hated Noah Brown. You hated on Noah Brown. You said he was only good for the miracle catch.
I said that.
Right.
I am.
But I seen him make a big play against the Giants to help seal the game.
No. I did not. But you know what? I acknowledge that though.
Yeah, we talked about it.
But then,
I acknowledge
you know what you do, Wole? You know what you do, Wole? You add a but, so that negates everything that came before that word.
I mean,
every time.
He had a great catch.
Right?
He had a great catch against the.
I'm an
he had a
English
great
teacher.
catch
You know I
against
know
the
what that
Giants.
definition is, right?
The Hail Mary was awesome fluke catch, but it was cool. It was right to him.
The Hail
right
Mary
at
was
him.
fluke, Donna.
Then it was like, but
look,
Mo, watch this. But he's also had a bunch of drops.
You see, that's it. He always wipes it away, right? And then,
other receivers had drops too.
And then right?
Yeah,
and
Terry had drops too.
And then
he's not Terry though. It's cool.
And then
Terry had drops.
Everybody, all the receivers had drops.
Zacchaeus started doing the little things. Then Zacchaeus started dropping the ball. He went against his own Nigerian brother.
I did that. I
turned
him on Nigerian brother. I did.
So that's Noah he went against.
So obviously, what does that tell you if I can turn him on Nigerian brother? What does that tell you? What does that tell you about me?
Luke, then.
It's no love for the brother.
And then De'Ami, everybody wanted De'Ami to do something. Then De'Ami did something. Then De'Ami started dropping the ball in that fumble. Now everybody's sour on De'Ami because of the fumble, right? So at this point, Wole wants them to bring in 4 new wide receivers to add to Terry and Deebo. And
Look, I take
he's
De'Ami
already going to cut Luke. He's already going to cut Luke. So
I cut Luke. I take De'Ami. I draft the receiver too. I do a lot. You know what I'm saying? I do a lot. Like, I mean, you give me a shoot, who's out there who I like?
Donna, leave it to them. That's where the free agency money's going to go. It's going to go at wide receiver.
Everybody like Noah. Noah, I'm going to tell you about Noah, man. I'm going to be real.
This
is not even knocking. This is actually me. This is legit. This is actually a true statement. This is not even me being a hater. Noah his availability ain't real. What I mean, he's always hurt. He's hurt everywhere.
Okay, so Donna.
True. But the place that he got hurt on, that's just.
But I'm just saying his body, like it's not fair to him. I'm just saying that his track record. We look at his resume. He gets hurt often.
Yeah, but you know what?
So I'm not. Why would I want to put that money into somebody who's going to be hurt often? That's the body of work. That's track record.
So does that mean?
Yeah, but the one thing about Noah though is that Noah early on in the season, Noah was Jaden Daniels' safety blanket.
Exactly. He was. I'm not. Yeah, exactly. I agree. But if you keep getting hurt, you're not available. What happens?
Big target.
You're not available.
That they needed.
Huh?
A big target that they needed.
So availability is key, right?
Yeah.
So if you're going to re-sign a player, that's what I'm saying. It's not if you're in the contract. We're talking about signing a player because he's a free agent. It's not just like why do you don't offer him like if we're talking about good business, typically. You don't offer unless you're an elite player. Unless you're elite, you typically don't try to re-sign an off-injury player.
So you know what you guys just presented to me? That means a wide receiver has to get drafted in this draft because nobody in free agency is going to come because they have 2 by name stud receivers because they're not going to think they're going to get the ball.
Yeah, you're talking about like,
So-
it's got to be a lesser receiver.
Right.
So that means a
gotta be a
third
lesser
rounder.
receiver.
A third rounder is in play for a receiver, especially
Yeah, it
in this
definitely is.
wide
It's in
receiver
play.
draft,
Yeah, in
especially
play.
a big body kid.
Yeah, it's in play.
Oh yeah.
So that's absolutely in play.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not arguing that.
Okay.
No.
Okay. I'm about to say, but
I
we've
mean,
been all
not,
over
it's just
the
that
world
it's just
with
like third, fourth round. Like, I'm not gonna argue that.
you ain't got a fourth round. It got to be the third or
said-
sixth.
Like I said at the beginning,
Oh,
Lance,
yes, right. Sorry, 36. Sorry, buddy. Yeah.
Lance said that they're looking at everything as far as how do they get better. So that's the key thing that we've got to remember is they're probably looking at a whole bunch across the board of this team. Does this player still fit in here? Can this player still be productive? Or do we need to plug in another receiver here, another running back here, another cornerback, or whatever the position may be? I think that they're assessing this whole team is what they told me of how do we get better moving forward, because other teams are going to get better too. Philadelphia ain't losing nobody on the defensive side of the ball, really. Up front, for sure. As a matter of fact, they're trying to
Yes,
compete.
they are. Yes, they are.
Sweat is the
No,
sweat.
what I'm saying is they're trying to compete with looking at what Washington, they say, oh, we ain't trying to let you get that player because we might try to get him so that y'all won't get him. So that's the key thing for Washington, I think, is that we're talking about where they're going to look at. They're assessing this whole team to get better. This was their first move as far as Deebo Samuels. What's going to be the next one? I hope it'd be a Mal Garrett in my book. So I hope that it'll be that one. Then that'll be like check one person, another one that addresses that. So it's going to play out, I think, in free agency. What they do in free agency is going to dictate what they do in the draft.
Wole, can I address Paul before you take us home?
Yeah, I'm about to. Yeah, go ahead.
Paul, I'm not going to let you get away with that about Noah Brown, because when the Hail Maryland was going on and it revitalized this team after his 3-game skid.
What did Paul say about Noah Brown?
Huh?
What did Paul say about Noah Brown?
He was trying to poo-poo on him, talking about that's the same reason they cut him. Like, y'all was in love with him when the Hail Maryland happened, and then, he started making play. Like, y'all not gonna keep doing. Y'all can't have it both ways. That's all I'm gonna say. Y'all can't have it both ways.
No. I can say on this show, we've been consistent with the Hail Mary night. We've been consistent about Noah Brown.
I have. Yeah, I know. I definitely.
Me too. I've been consistent.
I know. You had, you have too, though. We talk about you. I know.
Yeah.
You have too. Eagles, a Slay and Sweat. Yeah, Slay and Sweat. All right. So before about to close the show, show off. Hey, I appreciate everybody in the chat. Y'all live. It's like 10:55. Y'all don't have to be this live, but y'all live, so I appreciate y'all.
Indeed.
I always appreciate Donna, because Donna always got energy. You know what I mean? She's real, and she's like, she keeps the 100.
Energy, man.
Like, that's why I love having
Hey,
Donna.
I'm happy to be on with all the fellas tonight.
Yeah,
Donna,
Donna always
way to come in
keeps
and
it
move some furniture,
100.
Donna.
You know what I mean? There's nobody. Like, she don't sugarcoat stuff. That's what I like about her.
That's what I was saying.
She drops the truth bombs.
Way to come in here and move some furniture around.
So Don, this is the platform for you to, share your content, share your social feeds, and please don't make me have to go out and share it for you, because sometimes.
Hey, Wally, can you do that for me? You
all
do
right,
it
know
so
what?
well. You do it so well.
I'm gonna share your socials. Hold on.
I'm just gonna do this. Tony McGee's Pro Football Plus and our podcast in the minute, and then I'm gonna give the rest of the floor to Wally to share that Instagram DJ Hop 32.
You know what? I got you.
There you go.
On IG, you can follow.
I like
Donna.
to hear your voice say it more.
All right, I got you. On IG, you can follow Donna at DJ Hop 32 on IG. On X, you can follow her at Donna Hopkins _ on X. That's there you go.
There you go. See, are you doing so well with the bass in your voice and all that? That's the reason why I let you do it, Wally. Hey, Wally, I just want y'all to know he's making me be on X a lot more.
I tried.
Good.
I tried.
Yeah.
Look, man, I keep telling her, man. Look, I keep telling her. I watched Donna for a while, like growing up, her covering this football team. I used to watch her with her, Tony McGee. Gary Clark, when he stopped playing ball, like I watched this show religiously. It was one of my favorite. It was one of my routines on Sundays, like to get ready for the football game. So, I'm just saying, like, so when I say I need you on X, yeah, when I say I want you on X, I want everybody who don't know to know. You know what I mean? Like,
that's
they
right.
need to know what you like. Your career in the game is like that. is not a lot of people in this game, and some of the newer folks are not as good as you. They're not as personable as you, and you know what you're talking about. So that's it. That's the reason why.
On X, I only try to get y'all key stuff. I'm not trying to be on there all the time. When I come on X, is only to give you the solid stuff. So I may not post a lot, but I try to give you key information when I do come over there.
Yeah.
As the kids say, Donna, you certified.
Yeah, right.
You certified.
Yeah, she's certified. She's definitely certified. Hey, Paul, you tripping? We need a ABG uncut show. Nah, man, you tripping. You tripping.
No, I don't know if that's
great. Yeah, you tripping.
Redskins Magazine Plus, you had to be there. You had to be there when that was on.
What?
You had to be there when it was on.
You ain't tell me nothing. It's a funny story how I met Donna, because I was staring at her. I was like, "Are you?"
He was a stalker. No, I'm kidding.
No, I was right. No, I'm not gonna say where I met her at, but it was like, because I'm not putting nobody business out there. But I was like, don't you do stuff with the Redskins? Oh, it's you.
And ever since then.
So anyway, I appreciate Donna for being on. Appreciate everybody.
Thank you all. Do a great job. It's been fun tonight.
Always, Donna. It's always fun to have you on. Before we close the show out, let me remind y'all, subscribe to our podcast on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, and other podcast platforms. Just search All Burgundy and Gold Everything. Also tweet us at ABG_everything. Hit us up on IG and TikTok at ABG_everything. And also make sure you subscribe to our All Burgundy and Gold Everything YouTube channel. Please hit that red subscribe button and also like this video. All right, man, this has been a great show. Again, a dope show. Great discussion, great debate. You know what I mean? Mo talking about Luke McCaffrey and whatnot. Still amazing. That's okay. He found a way to bring Luke McCaffrey into this draft, to this combine show, which it is what it is. I'm not going to even say anything about that. Anyway, you've been listening to All Burgundy and Gold Everything, powered by the Urban Sports Scene of Fox Sports Radio, 96.9 FM and 1340 AM. Hopewell, Virginia, for ages. Deuces. We are out.